Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here mid-March. Kind of crazy how fast. I know I say that all the time, but it really does blow my mind, boys and girls. A random tidbit or fact, not that any of you care, but Peter and I have over 250 episodes. I was recently tallying it up and I knew we exceeded 250. So I don't have an exact count, but when I say time flies, that really does blow my mind. Anyway, sorry, boys and girls, got a little distracted, but we were in Nehemiah. We had left off with the fact he was the cupbearer. He had just received bad news, and now he's got to go serve the king. And how is he going to cover up the fact that he got bad news? Verse number 1 of chapter 2, and it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. Before this point, he has not been sad before he goes before the king. But in verse number 2, wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of the heart. Then I was very sore afraid. Boys and girls, the king knows. The king looks at him and he's like, something wrong. And you're not physically sick. It's something in the heart. Now, boys and girls, the king is not like shaking his finger at him like, how dare you not smile? The king cares about Nehemiah, actually, as we unfold the story and we know what comes up next. He cares about Nehemiah and he's wondering, what has made you sad? What has upset you? But Nehemiah at this point is like shaking in his boots. He's like, oh no, I did not fake that very well. Boys and girls, I do not have a poker face. I would not have faked it very well in front of the king either. So I can kind of feel his pain. Like, yeah, I didn't hide that very well. So Nehemiah he's scared. He's like, oh, great. I was upset before the king. The king noticed. Now what's going to happen? Verse number 3, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad? When the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire. Then the king said unto me, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the God of heaven. Boys and girls, a lot just unfolded in that verse, okay? Again, we can see the king actually cares about Nehemiah. He says, well, what's your request? What is it that we can do? And what is Nehemiah's response? Nehemiah prays. Before it even tells us what his response is to the king, Nehemiah prays. Boys and girls, we can pray anytime, anywhere. And it can be pretty quick, like, Lord, help me, or, oh no, Lord, I need help now. We can pray pretty quick to the Lord, and boys and girls, he's always listening. Just the other day in junior church, one of the kids asked me about if the Lord only hears our prayers or if he hears everybody's prayers. Boys and girls, the Lord is always listening. That's one of his, we might think of it like a superpower, but that's one of his supernatural abilities, is the fact that he can hear me talking here now, and he can hear the people in China, the people in Africa, the people all over the world at the same time. Boys and girls, we have a hard time sometimes watching TV and hearing mom call our names, or playing our video games and hearing mom call our names. But we won't go there. We saw in chapter 1, boys and girls, that when Nehemiah was upset, he prayed. Now we see that when Nehemiah needs wisdom, he prays. God knows everything. It's such an encouragement that we can go to God for wisdom. Boys and girls, sometimes we have no idea what to do. We have no idea what step to take or what decision to make. But boys and girls, we can talk to the person who knows what's going to happen in 10 minutes, who knows what's going to happen in 10 days, who knows what's going to happen in 10 years. And you can go to that person and ask for help with today's decision. Boys and girls, that's so encouraging to know. We don't have to guess at this world. Well, I hope I chose the right one. Boys and girls, God knows the future. He wants to help you make the right decisions. In verse number 5, and I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be, and when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Boys and girls, it might seem like something minor to you, but Nehemiah was sad before the king, which looked like a bad thing, looked like a dangerous thing. He was very afraid. But God took that scary situation and he turned it for what was good. Now Nehemiah, because he had appeared sad before the king, not that he was manipulating, but because he had been sad before the king noticed. The king said, how can I help? If the king had never known he was sad, the king wouldn't have known that Nehemiah needed help or needed the time off to go build the wall. Well, Nehemiah asks to go. The king says he can go. Nehemiah also asks for some papers that he can give to the people along the way. One, to get passage through that area, but also to get people's help. He asks for a paper for the keeper of the king's forest so he can get the supplies, the lumber that he needs to make the gates, to make the walls. And the king happily gives Nehemiah what he wants. He says, all right, you can go. Here's paper so you can get supplies. Here's paper so you can make your passage. And he gives him all of the permissions that he needs. It tells us that in verse 8. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertain to the house, for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of my God upon me. So it says, the king gave it to me. But what does he end with in that verse, boys and girls? We're still in the middle of this story, but by the good hand of God. The king gave it to him, but Nehemiah recognizes it really came from God. The fact that he had prayed to God and asked for God's help. Nehemiah gives God the credit for the king giving him everything that he asked for. Boys and girls, do you give God credit for the good things that you have? Do you thank him for what it is that he's given to you? God has so richly blessed us, boys and girls. You have a car that you can come to church in. You have a house that you can live in that has heat and running water, and you have food in the refrigerator, food in the pantry. Boys and girls, we don't have everything, but boys and girls, our needs are met, and we are so richly blessed. Take time to give God credit for the good things that he's given you, and take time to thank God for what he's given you. Boys and girls, look forward to studying the story of Nehemiah with